Good evening, everybody. We'll start with today's session of Organ of Medicine. Dear friends, we have discussed regarding the practical application of the 50 millisievert scale in day-to-day practice. How one should go ahead, why just giving a dry medicine, a single globule on the tongue, how it touches only few parts of the nerves inside the mouth, but if you prepare it in liquid potency, it touches the whole GI tract and it used to produce its good effects, and that's why Hahnemann advised it to give it in liquid form. That's what we have learned in earlier lecture. So these were the Hahnemannian aspects of applying the medicines and his logic in order to explain that how our medicine will going to work. So these are the things which we have discussed in detail in yesterday's lecture. Let us go ahead with the few more things in the aphorism number 273. This is in the sixth edition. He has changed. He has made the change regarding this aphorism. In fifth edition, in sixth edition, there are few changes which he has mentioned specifically related with it. So we'll read that aphorism first. There is a footnote also to this paragraph. That also we will learn. And if possible, we'll finish 274. But as far as possible, first understand the concept of 273 because it is too important to know. So we'll go ahead with 273. In no case under treatment is it necessary and therefore not permissible to administer a patient more than one single simple medicinal substance at one time. See, sentence we have to learn it clearly. We have to understand it clearly. He mentions over there one should go for one single simple medicinal substance at one time. Underline this at one time. This sentence is very important. Many times we never understand. Many people makes a different understanding about the same sentences. There are many people who considers there is only one remedy for the patient forever. How can it be? Homeopathy, when we define homeopathy, it is a simple definition is that a drug capable of producing in a healthy individual a disease state exactly similar to that happens in a diseased individual acts as a curative agent if the disease is in a curable state. When Hahnemann defines homeopathy, he states the homeopathic a state, disease state. And state is the thing which is ever changing. It will not going to remain permanent forever. And if you are prescribing a remedy on the basis of a state, how can be the one remedy will be the patient's remedy forever? If the state changes, the simillimum changes, the presentation changes. At present, if I am talking to you, I'm in a different mood. But something happens in my life, I goes into the exactly a different mood. My state changes. If my state changes after 1 hour, my simillimum also changes at that specific state. So simillimum which I have selected on the basis of the present state might be changed after 1 hour, after 2 hours, after 4 hours, after a day, after 2 days, after 15 days, because state will be thing which will going to change according to the situation. When you are prescribing on the state, remedy is for that specific state at that specific time. And that remedy, Hahnemann says, is the only specific remedy of that patient at that specific time. There are no specifics in homeopathy. Hahnemann says this is the specific remedy of that patient at that specific time. So one has to understand basically what Hahnemann wants to explain. So he has mentioned that if you are giving Naxvamika to the patient at present, depending upon his presentation, after 2-3 hours, the patient comes to you with a different type of symptoms. His acute state of Naxvamika has settled, but now he has in a different state because of something happens in his life. And he comes to you. At that time, his state might have changed to the belladonna. It might have changed to the aconite. It might have changed to the rust off. It varies. It varies because many a times mm, such a circumstances happens, and circumstances are responsible to stimulate the internal vital force, internal miasm to express its own state. And when it appears over there, it changes. And that's why the sentence which Hahnemann have used, the first sentence of this aphorism, is very important. In no case under treatment is it necessary and therefore not permissible to administer to a patient more than one single simple medicinal substance at one time. So if you prescribe another remedy after an hour, depending upon state, you are giving or you are following the law of simplex as explained by Hahnemann. Think over the things, very important. Even if Hahnemann would have lived for another 10 years, he would have made the changes in these laws. We'll discuss that at the end. When we'll finish this law, we'll discuss that thing also. But we have to think, we have to experiment, we have to understand, we have to use our intellect if we want to understand the things. What he further says, it is inconceivable how the slightest doubt could exist as to whether it was more consistent with nature and more rational to prescribe a single simple medicinal substance at one time. Again, he has mentioned it at one time in disease or a mixture of several differently acting drugs. It is absolutely not allowed in homeopathy. The one true, simple, and natural art of healing to give the patient at one time two different medicinal substances. Here again, he has mentioned it in italics at one time. See, it has been mentioned in italics. It is not mentioned in Roman. So, understand the depth of it. Why he has written in italics? Because he wants to explain you exactly the thought behind it. That at one time there will be only one similum. At two different times there might be two similums depending upon the state of the person. The earlier sentence is another important thing. It is inconceivable how the slightest doubt could exist as to whether it was more consistent with nature and more rational to prescribe single simple medicine at one time in disease or a mixture of several differently acting drugs. He says that how a doubt can develop in your mind in the nature that there is only one simillimum and there are no two simillimums or no, not a mixture of drugs. Basically, when you understand this law Hahnemann have created a way back. Only things are he has changed in it. He has made the changes in it. When he started his practice with material medicine in the form of a mother tinctures, at that time this law was very, very perfect. When you mix together two ingredients, if they are in liquid form and mix it together, they might form a third ingredient. This is the possibility because we are using it or you are mixing it in material doses. And definitely when you mix together two important material things, there might be possibility of third one to develop. Or if you add more than two or three drugs together, it definitely develops a different compound. And the properties of that compound are absolutely different than the original individual drug substances. This is possible. When you think about the material, this is possible. This happens to be there. But if you think logically, just think logically, go beyond. Never get restricted to Hahnemann. Just think logically that is it possible to mix together two dynamic things? Just a question. Ask to your mind, yes, is it possible to mix two dynamic things together? On one side, we see that there is no addition, there is no subtraction of the dynamic things. You cannot make or you cannot measure, in fact, the dynamic things. You cannot measure happiness, you cannot measure anger, you cannot measure irritability, you cannot measure thoughts. You cannot measure the things because they are immaterial, they are dynamic. You cannot say, yes, I have 10 gram of happiness. You cannot. How can it be possible that two ingredients you can mix together? If they are dynamic, how can you mix them together? It is not possible. So if you give one remedy and immediately after 5 minutes, if you give another remedy, it doesn't matter. I will explain my thought. You are sitting at a center. On one side, your father is there. On another side, your mother is there. In front of you, your brother is there, and behind you, your friend is there. Four dynamic entities who are dealing with you. Does it happen that question asked by the mother, you answer to your friend? When question is asked from mother, you react to the mother. Question is asked by the friend, you will react to the friend. If question is asked by father, you react to him. So whatever may be the action, the reaction is according to the situation. It never gets mixed together. So even though you are giving two different medicines, just one after another, it will not create any problem with the patient. This thought one should think about it. This is too important to understand. Because we have to change according to the situation. The patients was there with the patients when Hahnemann was practicing. Now the patients are more impatient when we are practicing. They expect very early result in your practice. They expect results, at least a palliation immediately. That is what with which patient comes to you from allopath to homeopath. He expects there should be some magic, and which is not possible when you just go rigidly with your giving single simple remedy one time and wait for another month. No use. You cannot. You have to be very careful, you watchful, understand whether your remedy acted or not acted, whether it is producing the positive signs at the general level or not. So you should be very cautious in order to give an instant result to the patient. And for that purpose, we have to understand the dynamics clearly. And in dynamics, there is no addition, there is no subtraction, there is no multiplication, there is no division which can happen. So we have to think beyond that, beyond Hahnemann. So if you go on giving one medicine after another medicine, considering the complementary relationship, it might work many times. In my practice, I used to use such things. I used to experiment. And when I get, yes, this works in such instantly. This is too important. Patients comes to you only because you produce the positive results in them. Otherwise, they never comes to you. So think over all those things. Think over this perspective, and one has to understand this. So never remains rigid or fixed with one entity which is explained in the book. Go ahead with our own thoughts and our own intellect. There is one footnote to this paragraph, footnote number 159. We'll learn what he wants to say over there. Two substances opposite to each other united into a neutral natrum and middle salts by chemical affinity in unchangeable proportions, as well as sulfurated metals found in the earth and those produced by technical art in constant combining proportions of the sulfur and alkaline salts and earth, for instance, natrum salt and calcarea salt, as well as those ethers produced by distillation of the alcohol and acids made together with phosphorus, be considered as simple medicinal substances by the homeopathic physicians and used for patients. On one side, he says that you should not mix it together. Then another side, he explains over there that in nature, many a times these substances gets mixed. In fact, those elements find it out in the nature in the combined form. You never get natrum separately and sulfur separately. You get natrum sulf as an element over there. You get many a times calcarea sulf, calcium sulfate. You get many a times natrum muriaticum. Only thing is that you have to prove them first. If they are mixed together, then you prove it. Don't consider just as a natrum as a remedy, the sulfur as a remedy, and logically just add a remedy. Yes, that is needed when the elements are separate. That is for the purpose of study of natrum group. Yes, definitely we must know what is natrum group. We must know what is sulfur. We must know group analysis. But practically, natrum should be proved on healthy human beings so that we get a proper data available for our prescription, and that on the basis of law of stimulus we can use. That will be a very perfect answer to this situation. But many times we don't have certain elements which are proved enough. No one have done the proving. At that time, we have to think about this group analysis as mentioned by Anne Scholten. He is the person who has worked very hard to understand the natrum as a separate element, sulfur as a separate element, natrum as a separate element, phosphorus as a different element, then natrum as a separate and chloride as a separate. And on the basis of the understanding those separately, he has made a group analysis and he had tried his level best to utilize it in the patient. When he has written the homeopathy and the minerals, he has mentioned cases cured with such group analysis. That is the experiment done by Anne Scholten. He has added many more drugs in the homeopathy and elements. There is a book written by him, Lanthanide series, completely newly proved by him. All those are the results of experimentation. And those experimentation gives you more details about the understanding of the remedy. So never gets fixed, rigid with certain things. We have to understand, we have to utilize, we have to practically confirm what the people have done. That experimentation we have to confirm. And then we utilize our remedy. Hahnemann also says over there the same thing in this footnote that calcarea sulf, the natrum sulf, these are the elements which are present over there. Consider them as a simple medicinal substance and used for the patients on the basis of law of symmetry. What he says further, on the other hand, those extracts obtained by means of acids of the so-called alkaloids of the plants are exposed to great variety in their preparation. For instance, chinin, strychnine, morphine, and can therefore not be accepted by the homeopathic physician as a simple medicine. Always the same, especially as he possesses in the plants themselves in the natural state, Peruvian bark, Naxonica, opium, every quality necessary for healing. He is explaining over there, yes, we have a Peruvian bark, the Sincon, the China, the Naxomica, the opium. If we extract their specifically the what you can say the alkaloids of the plant. In case of opium, it is a morphine. In case of the Naxomica, it is strychnine, the active principle inside that plant. When you extract it in the form of acids, it has a different properties than original Naxomica. It has the different properties than the opium. It has the different properties than the Chinese or chinin. And that's why he says over there, if you are proving the drugs on the basis of cinchona bark as a homeopathic medicine, the plant Accordingly, you prove it and find it out symptomatology, apply that on the basis of that. If you want to use basically the active principle over there, it becomes a different remedy. And that's why in our materia medica, if to open the Borix materia medica, we have a strychnine as a different remedy. We have morphine as a different remedy. Opium is different, morphine is different. So we have to understand this. And this is what Hahnemann says, that if you are taking the acid preparations of this active principles, then it becomes rather different remedy. Don't use or on the basis of the same provings. And what he says, moreover, the alkaloids are not the only constituents of the plant. This is very important word which he has used. Alkaloids are not only the constituents of the plant, because plant is made up of many things. Alkaloid is extract, only one extract. And that's why a morphine is different than the opium. Yes, some symptoms of morphine you can get in opium because it is the active principle of the opium. But it rather changes its property. And things are made clear by Hahnemann in order to explain regarding this is concept of the law of simplex. And he tried his level best to explain all those things to answer your question. So this aphorism we have to understand with a modern perspective and think over all those things. When you are using it in practice, if you are using dynamic remedies in your practice, if you give one after another, it doesn't matter. If you read Emil, what is that? Principles and Practice by Emil Dhawale's book. He has mentioned you give constitutional remedy as a separate one and acute remedy as a separate one. Yes, this is needed because constitutional remedy works with its own pace. If you give calcarea to the patient, calcarea will not going to cure that patient within a day because calcarea's pace is rather slow. And if patient is in agony, even though he is a calcarea or she is a calcarea, but he is in agony, presenting acute presentation, you might have to complement it with either Rustox or belladonna, depending upon that state of the person, and then constitutional remedy plays its own role with its own speed. And those things we have to take into consideration when dealing with the patient. And we have to utilize this practical application as mentioned by Hahnemann. So if you are giving calcarea cup today, followed it by the Nux vomica, followed by it with the Rustox, it doesn't matter because you are not mixing calcarea cup with the Rustox in one bottle. You are giving it separately at two different times. So things are made very clear by Hahnemann over here. And that's why he has added 3 times in this aphorism the word at one time. And one has to understand this with his own perspective. So I think that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with it and we'll continue with the next aphorism. Till that period, thank you being there. If any queries are there, we'll discuss. One more thing I want to make sure regarding tomorrow is Thursday, the Divine School session at 9 o'clock. And I will going to share my experiences with the remedy Flaspi bursa pastoris. So it will be a good session, practical session for everyone. You can learn a lot. Ask your friends to join. It's sharp at 9 o'clock with the same ID and password. And it's free for every student and of the homeopathy. So go through, ask them to attend the sessions tomorrow sharp at 9 o'clock, and 6 o'clock our regular session of Organon will be continued. Okay, so shall I conclude or any query is there? So thank you being there. Thanks everyone for attending session. We'll meet tomorrow at 6 o'clock.